Forum, Mr. Weezer, Mr. Koretz, myself, Bernard Parks, as chair. Colleagues, if we can go through the agenda, we have one item closed session on number 1. Also, if we can move items 2, 8, and 9 on consent. Item 8 is a ordinance that's gone through a previous committee, and I think we've seen it at least once here. And then 9 being the issue of transferring the ownership of a property in CD 11 back to CDD. Any concerns on those 3? So you got any concerns? Okay, so we'll move those 3 on consent. I just asked on item 2, if we could ask Office of Finance to provide us a little more depth as to the type of businesses on these liens and also the specific address, if we could legally do that, as opposed to just the council district and the name of the business. And then we would, on number 8, concur with the job committee recommendations. Okay, we will go into closed session for one item and then come back and deal with the remaining items. And then, Erica, now what do we have to do on 11? Is special? We got a timeline or whatever? By the time we come back,
we can do it when we
okay.
come back.
All right. Reconvene the regular meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. We've addressed item 1 in closed session, but we have to make a vote on that item for open session.
And just for the record, this is a request for outside counsel in the amount of $200,000 for the matter of Brent versus City of Los Angeles and other related litigation.
So we'll move that item for the outside counsel. Also, we've been joined by Mr. Rosendahl, and he would like to be added on the yes vote on the 3 consent items. So we'll go to the next. And then also we can now, I guess, address number 11. We're within the time limit.
Yes, I believe we're after 1:15, so if you would like to go to the special agenda, which is item 11, and it's a CO report in response to the 11-12 budget recommendation relative instructing the CO to convene a task force for the city attorney, police department, and fire department to improve risk management policy to prevent high-risk liability, and a subsequent request for a police administrator to position to address risk management issues within LAPD.
Why don't we get a little briefing on that?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
We just have a little briefing on the intent of this request.
Which part? Both of them, or
On the
part about the risk management
management, yes.
overall,
the
or
position.
the position? Yes, yes. After spending some time reviewing what's happening with our lawsuits, it became apparent that the solution, as obvious as it may seem, is to try to prevent them. We've done incremental steps and believe that the approval of this position, which will coordinate all the risk management activities, including training, being a resource for the department when situations arrive that we need to convene overall larger meetings about particular areas, and to assist us in liaisoning with the city attorney on our cases. We have, prior to this, we have adopted a retaliation prevention unit, which is now called the Protected Activities Unit. We have a formal committee that meets approximately once a month that's consisted of all the command staff relating to risk management, including the 3 assistant chiefs, relating to what's happening in particular areas. And then we have ad hoc meetings when particular situations arrive as to employees or to divisions. This person will coordinate all of that and allow us to prevent some of the lawsuits that we've had happen in the past, which we believe will save a substantial amount of money, more than the salary of this person. Additionally, we are asking this to be a resolution authority so we can see how it works for the next year, and are giving up 2 positions, not filling 2 positions, which will more than pay for this.
Okay. Let me just ask a couple of questions. One thing, when I looked at your organizational chart, and also having had LAPD personnel come to the Claims Board and at this committee, at one time we had a commander that was doing this job. And so what happened to the commander?
The commander position was moved into a training. We made it into a captain's position. It's now a Captain 3, which originally had been at one point a Captain 3, then it was upgraded to a commander, and now it's back to a Captain 3. The person who takes this role will be the immediate supervisor of the Captain 3, or at least on the same level as the Captain 3. The Captain 3 will, I'm sorry.
No, wait, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the Captain 3 is the person who more than, what the Captain 3 does is administer that division, which is the investigators that assist the city attorney in their preparation for lawsuits, the discovery section, and now this protected activity unit.
Then let me ask, the CEO normally, and having looked at these organization charts in the past, we've not approved where we have one administrator reporting to the other administrator. I'm just wondering, is that a deviation?
I think
But a 3 reporting to the new administrator?
Well, I think the police administrator 2 is a commander level, equivalent to a commander level.
But again, I think, I understand that, but in the past, we've been very reluctant to have a captain as a single report to a commander, and that commander have no other responsibility.
Oh, that person will have other responsibilities than just maintaining that unit. Also is involved in the training of the command staff and all the supervisors in the risk management issues, particularly how to handle subordinates and when subordinate issues arise, and also in issues of assisting the subordinates, the supervisors in preparing the documentation necessary for the employee action. Additionally, that person will report to me. So they will report up to me. Sorry, go ahead.
I think you raise a good point, and normally we like to have a little bit greater span of control. I think as we really look at LAPD and isolate some of their litigation, and whether it be workers' comp or general liability, things of that sort, there is a need to really focus on this issue. If you look at a report, the dollar amount that we're talking about is millions. And we believe that at this point it'd be well served the city and the department to have a high-level position. At least, this is a reserve position for 1 year, but that person, that position is going to really focus on trying to delve down into some of the details and really get into the issues and try to explore ways to actually reduce these litigation costs.
All right. I'll ask you an instruction later, but let me ask another thing. On the CAO report, do we intend to reflect on page 2, the second to last paragraph, that this position is the final authority in determining LAPD's course? Are we taking responsibilities away from the chief of police, or?
No. Page 2, which?
It's on the CAO report, page 2, second to
No.
last paragraph, the last sentence.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay. So they'll be making some recommendations to the chief of police?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
All of us make recommendations to the chief, as
That's
you
what I
know.
thought. That's what I thought, but it's a new day. I just wondered
No.
if there was a coup or something.
No.
So if we can alter that in the report to reflect that the final authority still rests with the chief and recommendations will be made.
Yes.
Absolutely and
Make me a
categorically.
little less nervous.
Yep.
Thank you for pointing that out.
And then also on the positions, we'll hold through this fiscal year and into next fiscal year, or how does that work?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is really positioned for the 1 year, and we'd hold those positions vacant for the current fiscal year. And as we go through the budget process, then we can reevaluate as necessary.
I believe this position will be very beneficial and save us money, so you'll probably see it in the request in next year's budget.
Next
But in
year's
that-
budget, that you just eliminate the current that you're holding and just keep the requested position would probably be for 12-13.
And we would keep vacant the same positions to achieve the zero cost.
All All right, any questions?
Yeah, first, Mr. Fire Department, what's your thoughts on all this?
Having looked at the PD's proposal, fire department will be coming forth with something similar as far as a person that would be in charge of our litigation. I've just spoken with our
Give your name for the record, just for the
Oh.
sheet.
Emil Mack, Chief Deputy Operations. I just was speaking with our Fire Commission IA, and he has said that, and I can say this, he is coming to the same conclusion that we had before, and that we need a professional risk management litigator that is overseeing our litigation section. Right now, we have uniformed personnel that are doing a good job with the skill set that they have. But to truly be effective, we do need a professional risk management litigator that is actually, that is their profession and specialty. So we will, like LAPD is now, be coming forth with such a proposal in the future, and it also will be part of our Fire Commission IA's report also.
Good. Well, thank you for that. And Jerry, I know you can't throw money at us here, but what's your sense of how this will work?
I mean, how much we'll save?
Yeah.
I think we'll save substantial amounts, because, as I said, the purpose of this is to prevent lawsuits. We've already had a number of situations through an informal process where I think we've prevented some lawsuits by how we ameliorated some management employee issues. And I can't speak specifically, but I can tell you that we've had 3 or 4 occasions where we've moved in quickly to solve some problems.
Right. Well, thank you for that.
Oh,
Does this belong in the LAPD? Does it belong in city attorney's office? Have you had conversations with the
Well,
city attorney's office?
Yes, but this does belong in the LAPD because it's not strictly dealing with litigation. In fact, if we did this right, hopefully all the litigation would go away. So this is one to assist with training and prevention. And I think the city attorney is there to help us when we have issues. We consult with them. But this is the person who on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute time period will be dealing with our issues and our issues alone, not all of which are legal. So that's why.
Have you gotten feedback from the city's
Well, the
attorney's
city
office
attorney
on it yet?
sent a memo to somebody saying that something about not hiring a lawyer, and we never said it was going to be a lawyer specifically, but we're certainly not going to preclude lawyers from applying. I'm a lawyer. There's about 150 police officers who are lawyers. The head of our unit, use of force division, is a lawyer. So I hate to think being a lawyer disqualifies you from something, but we understand clearly.
Maybe it should.
Well, that could be. Hey, I could take retirement. We understand the city attorney is the lawyer for the city, and when we have an issue that requires a city attorney opinion, we ask for it. When we have an issue that we think requires city attorney advice, we ask for it. This position will not interfere with that in any way,
And the city attorney hasn't objected.
other than having a lawyer. They haven't objected at all. And as I said, we hope to eliminate the need for lawyers by reducing. We are the largest client, sub-client. You're the client, we're the sub-client. We are the largest part of the city that has liability, and we're trying to eliminate some of that, especially in the employment area. I don't want to see any more judgments, particularly large judgments against the city of Los Angeles because the police department didn't do something right.
Yay.
Yeah, we see those all the time.
I
as
know you
know,
do.
So,
And that's why I'm here, to ask for this.
and just to clarify, you're not looking for an attorney. You're just saying you wouldn't preclude one. Just as in your position, you didn't need to be an attorney,
No,
but we wouldn't say we wouldn't hire you because you are one.
As the chief said, having somebody with litigation experience in this area is beneficial, but as the former chief pointed out, I'm not the final decision maker on who we hire. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Let me just say, one thing I was somewhat surprised that unit started in 2001, and for the express purpose of what we're talking about today, yet we've seen this increase. And so I hope that the position will turn around that activity so that we can reduce some of these costs. I'll just ask that we correct that one paragraph on page 2 about recommendations as opposed to final authority, and that we ask the CAO, as they continue to study this, that we ask the CAO to continue to look at that span of control of 1-to-1, because that's somewhat inconsistent with what has been pretty much a mantra of the CAO's office about placing positions with a one-on-one span of control. And also, I think, Mr. Chair, if I mentioned to you a while back that we've asked the city attorney to give us litigation numbers on traffic collisions.
Yes.
And so they should be coming forth. We want to have some assessment prior, 208 prior and after 208 to give some sense of whether the new discipline and addressing traffic accidents has made an impact, or whether it's gone higher or whatever.
And the only issue there that will inhibit some of the numbers is that some of the lawsuits are filed before the change, and therefore with the judgments come after.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the city attorney can call those out. And
I think what we just asked, just to get some raw numbers.
Okay.
That we get the judgments before 208 and earlier, and 209 forward, regardless of when they occurred, just to get an idea on the figures.
And I track particularly the ones in those and the employment lawsuits, and that's the reason you have this proposal in front of you.
All right. So we'll move that item 11 with those couple of recommendations and instructions.
Thank you.
Very good.
Do we have a
Thank you.
date when this come into council?
Is it Friday?
Placeholders requested for this Friday, the 19th.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. So with that, if we can actually go to item 4, which is another item regarding litigation, liability claims, and so forth. This is adopted budget recommendation relative to requesting the city attorney to report on a bi-monthly basis to the Budget and Finance Committee on the status of liability claims and outside legal counsel costs, the latter to include proprietary department expenses as well. Such reports should include the following: available balance and covered balance, expenditures to date, projected needs for balance of fiscal year, and if additional funds are needed, specify corrective actions that are being taken.
Maybe I can facilitate this. I think we've had so many different requests and pieces that they may be in conflict with each other. And what I'd like to do is just hold this in committee and ask the CAO, the city attorney, and the CLA to go through all of these variety of motions and directions and create a format for a report and come back with a format that is inclusive of all of these directions, so that we're not trying to deal with them piecemeal or one at a time.
I'm sorry, Councilman, so you mean even combining liability claims reporting with outside counsel?
I think you have to look at that. I don't want to make a judgment, if you can. I know we just gave you an extension on one of these reports to do quarterly
Yes,
as
that's
opposed to
outside counsel.
bi-monthly. The issue of whether litigation and the outside counsel can be merged, I don't know, but I think it would be better off calendar where you guys can work it out and determine how you can give us the best information, because a lot of these pieces that we've asked you have come from a variety of committee meetings and budget hearings, and I don't know if they're all in sync with each other, and I don't think we can resolve it in an open committee. So I'd ask if we get the CAO and the CAO, the city attorney, and the CLA to work together and come back with a format that basically gets to the spirit of what these requests are.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Gary Geis, Chief Assistant City Attorney for the City Attorney's Office. We can do that if you wish. In the past, however, it has been pretty clean as far as our status and where our final accounting is on the 9770 and the 9760 accounts. And that seems to be pretty straightforward, whether or not the cases that have been litigated, judgment, settlements, all of the payouts, and whether they're within budget or outside of budget seems to be pretty straightforward. If you'd like us to merge them into some other or morph them into another report, we can, but the numbers are the numbers.
I think the liability account is smooth. We get it, and we look at both of them. But again, I think there was some requests to add information. And again, if we can look at, you guys can look at that and bring us back if that alters the format. And then the same thing with the outside counsel with what we just approved to extend it. And I think it'd be better if you kind of got together and addressed it, as opposed to us trying to debate whether one item versus another is more important, and to bring us back a format that addresses the spirit of what all of these different requests are.
Okay.
Let's do that. Thank you.
And with that, we'll hold this in committee until we get a report back from the CAO, the city attorney, and the CLA as to a appropriate format to address the spirit of these requests.
Okay, let's go back to item 3, which is Office of Finance report relative to the accounts receivable citywide improvement initiatives report for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2010-11.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Whitmore, the Revenue Manager in the Office of Finance.
Todd Bowie with Office of Finance.
Good afternoon. And we're going to deal with your previous report to council tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So if you can just, this is the most recent, if you can kind of, I don't expect you to go through everything on the attachments, but just give us a overview, particularly areas that we've accomplished and particularly areas that we can't accomplish because you're not getting the cooperation that you need.
Okay. Well, obviously, as you know, this is a comprehensive report of initiatives based upon the controller audit, Macias study, core commission recommendations, and various council motions. So it's a conglomeration basically of all those initiatives. There are a number of specific areas we'll hit on, and to do that, I will ask Todd Bowie to go ahead and touch upon those.
So this is the next iteration, or the latest iteration of ongoing quarterly reporting. This is for the fourth quarter of the prior fiscal year, and we've accomplished, I think, a number of things in this report. So this report is basically outlining or delineating finance's efforts in addressing 75 different items directly. We're also providing in this report our fiscal year-end totals for our various revenue programs, and as you noted, that's probably something that our director will probably go into a little bit tomorrow. And then we're also providing departments report backs on an additional 100 different department-specific directives, and I think that a lot of this will be a good starting point also for the proposed inspector general position once that comes online. So I think in terms of what this report is showing since the last time that we reported is primarily in the area of having brought together a lot of information that we previously didn't have. Obviously, we've continued to implement and continue our various revenue programs, such as the administrative liens and the non-tax amnesty programs and some other programs that we've run this prior fiscal year. We've also brought forward to the city attorney a RFP for debt sale, so that's pending city attorney's review, so that we can begin to start to move forward in that as well. But otherwise, I think mostly we've made a lot of strides in our data and reporting. I think we have a lot more robust information, a lot better idea as to the status of accounts receivables. And we've also compiled a lot of information from all the various departments. And I think that what we found is that departments are being very cooperative and very willing to work with us. And so we have, instead, I think, provided a lot of information here that we previously didn't have, and we're going to continue to strive to do that. And we want to make more inroads in some of the policies and procedures, and getting some of those a little bit in a little bit better position. But we did release updated guidelines just recently through the mayor's office. The mayor's office also has instructed departments that our guidelines on billing and collection should be treated as directives of the mayor's office, and as well as we're also making strides in our technology in terms of centralizing data and reporting through that project as well, which we're still online for a December implementation for that. So I think that for the most part, what we're showing here is that the city is trying to work towards improving our accounts receivable management, and departments are really getting on board. And I think that we're going to start to see some progress here with some of the numbers that we've been seeing. I know that the fire department and transportation are both committed to beginning to bring down their outstanding balances, and they've, in particular, now the fire department has brought on a chief accountant that's been working very diligently along those lines as well. So I think that in the next quarterly reporting, and as we're moving forward into this fiscal year, I think we'll start to see a lot better environment in terms of our accounts receivable management and the numbers that we're reporting.
Let me ask you on a couple of things, and I was concerned, what is it that's going on with the convention center, and then also with our paramedic billing that may create confidentiality issues about being part of the system? And I just get concerned that we've been talking about this now for 3 or 4 years, and for this late date to be told that stuff that we're waiting for and believe that should be in the system might have a confidentiality issue seems late in the game and really contrary to what I thought everybody is working towards. So we'd have this accounts receivable, which was not a inexpensive add-on to the program. So can you give us some background why all of a sudden there's a confidentiality issue?
Yeah, it was a surprise to us. The way that the database is structured is we would receive invoice-specific information from all the different AR systems out there, and so we had set it up in particular for fire and also for DOT because we knew there were constraints on the information that we could receive, so that we wouldn't be receiving any demographic information whatsoever. We were under the impression that that would be satisfactory, but basically the preliminary look at that from the city attorney's office was that even knowing that something is related to an ambulance billing and having even an invoice number would constitute potentially a HIPAA violation. So that seemed like a really difficult threshold to apply in terms of being able to get any information whatsoever. It would pretty much make it very difficult for us to get anything but very, very high-level summary information. And so this came out as the project was progressing, and the department was engaged with the city attorney on the topic, and said everyone was pretty much under the impression that we had eliminated all the fields that would have created a red flag, but even just that very, very minor amount of information, even though it's not directly traceable or to any individual or anything like that, they've still determined, at least initially. So they're looking at it further, and they're basically trying to put together a more formal response to that issue for us. But everything before that had been going well in the department, and their contractor had met all their timelines and were basically ready to go until that very last minute wrench was thrown into the works.
What about the convention center?
Convention center, a little bit different story. They're basically not participating in the project, and at this point in time, they would definitely not be able to participate by December, so they haven't started.
What they've done is express concern that it would interfere with their competitive environment, with the possibility of what they feel confidential information relative to outstanding receivables might be a negative or derogatory toward customers.
Let me ask you, when we started this project, did we give departments the ability to opt out?
As far as we know, the answer is no to that question.
No. I mean, this thing cost us several $1 million to put it together, to trace all of our financial systems that we've been telling people we're going to get. And at the last minute, we find out one of the largest ones, paramedic building, might be ineligible. And then a department says, I just opt out. And then transportation, which is the next biggest, there may be some issues there. So the question has to be, why are we spending all this money for the ones for departments we're not having problems with? So I think we need to go back, and particularly on the city attorney's advice. I think they've been with us on moving forward on this from the beginning. to come up today and say you can't have any information, even the word paramedic might cause a liability, just seems to be something that wasn't well thought out in the beginning. And so we'll ask the CAO and the department to go back on those particular confidentiality issues, and unless the mayor's office eliminates the convention center, I think we have to get them to comply with what the directions have been. When we look at Executive Order 5 and 9, I don't think it says everybody but the convention center. I think it says...
And I was going to just add, I think the convention center, in that particular case, it's really going to be a decision up to the council. As far as we're concerned, they should be part of the car project. They've, thus far, have not been.
I think unless, I don't remember the executive orders saying everybody but them. So if that's the case, then we should expect them to be a part of the system. And so we should, hopefully the CAO can get with Office of Finance and Fire Department and the City Attorney and work out, and the Convention Center and DOT, and work out what is perceived to be conflicts and get them moving so that this system operational in December is actually going to produce what we're paying for.
This right now, as far as the convention center, given the delays in their participation, they will not be able to meet the December deadline.
But
So we know.
They need to be working, unless there's...
I would agree. We've had multiple conversations with them. We have not been persuaded by their arguments, and we have felt that they need to be included.
Tell them we expect them to be a part of it. So if we can get those done, because I mean, this is amazing. We're, 4 months away from pulling the switch, and we're saying people are opting out of this multi-million-dollar program.
And just for the record, Mr. Parks, I just want to make clear that we don't necessarily share the position of departments, and we, as Ray indicated, we continue to apply the pressure and work with them to make sure as many of these departments are involved as much as possible. But that is still our official position, that we should be going forward aggressively with all of these departments.
And I think whoever, and I can't remember who the deputy mayor is for those departments, but that should be a point of contact to let the general managers know that the Executive Order 5 and 9 are expected to be followed. And unless they come to the city CAO with something legitimate about these issues on the confidentiality, and again, that's so late in the game, I just don't see how we could be that far off on the original judgment of what the system was going to entail. So if we can get with the deputy mayor or whomever that deals with those departments and let them know what the status is, I'd appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Then let me ask you a couple other questions on the issue, other than what we just talked about, any other departments that are not cooperating or moving forward?
No, all others are. And for that particular project, transportation is a little bit behind with their contractor, but they've been moving forward very aggressively now, and so they may be a little bit behind in the implementation, but they've been working very much to get on board.
We expect that when their contract expires, we'll get more of ability to construct how they should perform in the future.
Yeah, there should be some language in the RFP that also will address this as well.
And then let me ask you on where are we on, and I understand from your standpoint there may be some legal issues on us selling debt as opposed to having a broker and the seller. Where is that, or did we resolve it?
That RFP has been formalized. It's in the city attorney's office now. We've had a couple of meetings with them. They did express some concern about, again, we're back with the HIPAA issues, a large portion of that being EMS accounts, and that whether or not the selling of those type of accounts would be in any kind of violation of HIPAA requirements. So collection agencies have been used to collect upon these type of accounts previously, so I am not an attorney, but it was my initial assessment that it would be the same scenario. So they're evaluating that right now, and they should be getting back to us with a formal position relative to those accounts.
All right, do we have any timeline of when that may occur?
I could not specifically state, but we've been in weekly contact with the city attorney's office. So it is difficult for me to say off the top of my head.
Okay. Then my final question, where are we on the RFPs for the 4 consultants that go out and get our tax and business tax and things of that nature?
Understand that the renewal of those contracts is due next month, and those have basically been completed. We're on schedule to get those signed and those extended so that there will be no lapse in service or no break in the contract. All of the accounts that all of the contracts that we have will be up for renewal in September of 2012. And at that time, all the primary as well as secondary agencies will be rebid.
Okay, the ones I'm talking about, the consultants that do the collections on things like documentary transfer tax. And those
I'm
things.
sorry.
Yeah. I think there's 4 of them.
Ed Cabrera, Assistant Director, Office of Finance. We're moving forward on the contracts that you've mentioned. There are some legal issues on some of the contracts. We've also been in negotiations with various vendors on other of the contracts we've had. For example, on our CUT, Communications Usage Tax, and our Transient Occupancy Tax, we have identified the successful bidder, and we have initiated our contract negotiations with those 2 contracts. On our Sales and Use Tax contract, we do have a legal issue that we're working with the City Attorney's Office to resolve. The Documentary Transfer Tax, we will be issuing an RFP on that program very shortly. So we are moving forward on each of these contracts. Our business tax contract, business tax discovery contract, we also have entered into negotiations, and we are finalizing those negotiations. We've been working with the vendor. They have had some legal concerns that we're working with city attorney to resolve as well.
Now, I understand one of the legal concerns is that they may be working for another municipality.
That's on the sales and use tax, correct?
But do we have any expectation of people that are in private industry that they're only going to work for us?
I'm sorry?
I said, do we have any expectation that if people are in private industry that they're only going to work for us?
No, certainly not, but we've worked with the city attorney to arrive at some contractual language that we believe will resolve the conflict and the legal issues. We're discussing that particular set of language with the vendor, and it is our hope that that will resolve the matter.
Okay. I would just like to say on those 4, particularly being that they are out collecting money that we would not normally get, we need to make every effort not to allow them to lapse in the future. We did put the RFP out well in advance because if they're not searching for money, no one else is. And we just need to make sure that whatever it takes to not have a lapse in period on those 4, we need to make every effort to do that.
No, I certainly understand the concern, but I would also clarify that for the majority of the contracts, the vendors work as backup, so we do have our internal staff in most of these instances who are identifying the revenue. Most of these contracts are secretary backup to our staff's work, but I do understand the concern, and we will work to get these resolved.
I know. But if the backups are bringing in several $1 million,
yes, that's correct.
We'd leave it on the table if we didn't have them.
Understood.
Yeah, just curious, the sentence here, the RFP has been designed to secure a broker for evaluation and sale of debt. However, finance writes that this proposed model requires further legal consideration. The RFP has not been, may need to be modified. Upon completion of review, RFP will be transmitted to the council. The sensing of timing of that?
Again, it's in the arena of the city attorney. We are working with them diligently, trying to push it through as quickly as possible. But based upon our last meeting, they said there's a significant review that still needs to occur. I don't know how to put a timeline on that.
Okay. Taking that question, Finance, you reported that citywide collection totaled 27.3 which was slightly below prior year of 28.3. That's pretty close. What do you blame that on? Is it not collecting it, or just?
No, I mean, I think we had a number of activities during the course of last year, implementing the lien program. We had a tax amnesty program. There were a number of things that we initiated to try to effectuate higher collections. I mean, one of the things, obviously, we had a 30% vacancy rate in our office the vast majority of the year, and that has to have affected it to some degree.
Thanks.
Yeah, no question, is this an agreement that we don't want to let any of our departments wriggle off the hook? We intended to include everybody, and I certainly agree with the chairman that we want to go after all of them and pull them into line on this.
Any other questions? One thing, we'll move this item, which is a note and file, but I want to add just a couple of instructions. One, that instruction that on the 4 RFPs that deal with specific efforts to collect sales tax, business tax, hotel tax, utility tax, that we ask Office of Finance to process those RFPs as quickly as possible and to ensure that we do not have lapses in the future as to those contracts being in play. We also want to ask the CAO and Office of Finance to work with the Convention Center and also the Fire Department and LADOT to resolve any of these conflicts and confidentiality issues so that we can move forward on the system. Also ask the CAO to work with Office of Finance and the City Attorney on the uncollectible debt RFP regarding the broker versus the collections so that we resolve that conflict. And then we'd ask that Office of Finance work with the Mayor's Office to ensure general managers are in full compliance with Executive Order 5 and 9. And the final issue is that the CAO, CLA, Office of Finance work with the City Attorney to prioritize all ordinances that are needed for this project, along with all review and advice to be concluded as quickly as possible. We can ask those several instructions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So we move that item with those instructions.
Okay, that takes us to item number 5, which is an adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the CAO with the assistance of the Office of Finance report on how to establish a special fund via the collection of taxes so as to enable Office of Finance to become self-funded.
Let me ask, Karen, did we resolve this in the budget? This budget note, did we resolve it by the, what was done in the budget?
No. What was done in the budget was the consolidation of the Office of Finance and the Treasurer. And what was requested was that for implementation next year, although this has been an ongoing one, but that's for implementation next year.
In 12-13?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I thought we had done something on it.
Maria Gutierrez with the CAO's office. When we last came to your committee, we indicated at that time we were working on making sure the consolidation of Treasurer and Finance was going forward and implemented before we could take a look at this issue. We have met with the Office of Finance. We met with staff to look at the various issues that the Budget and Finance Committee instructed us to look at. One of the issues is to ensure that both direct and indirect costs are included in such special fund. The initial proposal only addressed direct costs. The committee also instructed that staff look at finance-generated revenue instead of the overall business tax. And we've been working with staff on that issue. And the committee also instructed us to look at the inclusion of the Treasury activities in such special fund. We did meet with staff. There are a couple issues that we need to address prior to coming forward to you. The mechanism for capturing both the direct and indirect costs, If we include the Treasury functions in this ordinance, in this special fund, what are the implications for including the bank fees, which could fluctuate from year to year and make up about $10 to $11 million of the department's budget. And also working with the Department of Finance for clarification on how it is that the estimates for finance-generated revenue are determined. So we continue to work with staff, and hopefully we'll have more information with you shortly.
And so we expect something like within 60 days, report back?
That's doable, yes.
Okay. The one thing, and I don't think when we did this motion, anyone conceived the Treasury being merged. I think we're
Yes.
just looking at Office of Finance and particularly their revenue-generating operation. So if Treasury brings in a different equation, we need to be aware of that. 'Cause I
As
don't
far
think
as funding
as far as
sources?
the funding, or whether there are positions within Treasury that need to be considered as it relates to revenue generation.
Okay.
Is that-
No.
Okay, with those instructions, we'll have a report back. So we'll hold it in committee for a report back in 60 days.
Okay, item number 6 was another adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the planning department to report to the Budget and Finance Committee with a status report on the department's special fund.
Good afternoon. We were asked in our budget hearing to report back on the status of our various special funds. And I understand there's been discussion in prior years about creating a special fund which would encompass all of the department's operations. Currently, we have the two major special funds, the case processing special fund and the long-range planning special fund. The case processing covers all of our direct fee-generating activities, all of our planning and land use permits and applications. And the long-range planning fund at this time covers the vast majority, almost the entirety of our new community plan program. So
what do we
those are
call
the
that?
funds we have now.
What do we call the one that covers the community plans?
It's called the long-range
Long-range.
planning special revenue fund, I believe.
So currently, we have two in place.
Yes.
Now, I think the department said they were no longer interested in that enterprise fund.
I don't think it would work for covering the balance of our operations. Much of it is council-requested work that we can't charge anybody in the public for. Also, we subsidize specific fees in areas like appeals from the public and single-family dwellings, where we would never be able to recover our costs on those because it's not feasible, and it's not the policy decision of the city to fully charge for public appeals. So those would be problematic. I don't think it would work.
For what the budget request or instruction was, did we already complete that by having the two funds that are currently set up?
Yeah, the funds were created last year, and I think that was the idea, was to get our fee support activities fully covered. And as of this week, we will be.
Right. So as far as what was requested in the budget, it's already done.
Yes.
So what's the difference between the Building and Safety Enterprise Fund and why we can't do something similar in the Planning Department?
Building and Safety has much smaller portion of their department is not generated by people coming in and filing applications. The vast majority of their work is people coming in, they pay a fee, and that supports the work. The only portion of Building and Safety that's not, doesn't fall into that category is code enforcement, and I know there's developments, they continue to work with you to try and create some revenue out of that, but that's not inherently something that's ever going to completely recover all of its costs. With planning, we have the appeals that I mentioned earlier. Building and Safety doesn't generally have to deal with appeals as much. And we subsidize those to an enormous extent. They're essentially free.
And legally, they have to be free, right?
I believe from a legal standpoint, the council could choose to charge the full cost of an appeal, but I don't think it would be in the public interest. At least the determination's been made in the past that it's not in the public interest to charge, $20,000-$30,000 for an individual seeking to file an appeal on a project next door to them.
Got it. And so, how are these two funds doing today? They've been in up.
Our funds are doing pretty well. The case processing fund has not been quite achieving the budgeted revenue that we were hoping for because the incoming caseload has been down due to the economy. But we are absorbing that impact pretty well with vacancies. So the fund is in pretty good shape as we stand right now. The long-range planning fund actually generated more revenue than anticipated last year by a little more than 10%, so it's doing quite well as well.
So what are the numbers?
Last year, these are preliminary numbers, subject to change a little bit as we close the year, but last year, case processing fund generated $11.7 million, and the budget was $13.9 million. And then long-range planning generated $1.65 million, and the budget was $1.5 million.
1 point what?
1.5.
When you say last year, we're talking about last fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay.
But this is only helping to recoup some of the costs associated with operating some of those operations. It's not additional to going back to the additional work that's needed in the planning department.
No, the case processing covers simply the work required to process those applications, and long-range planning fund covers the work we're currently doing on the 7 new community plans we're working on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if we move forward with this, how will it affect our ability to do all the backed up community plans, or will it?
Moving forward on
with the fund that we're talking about.
Continuing with the current structure, we're slowly eating into the backlog with the city's financial restraints and and the incoming cases not being tremendously high. It's hard to we don't really have enough money to take an aggressive approach on backlog, but we are slowly working through it.
What do you think the timing would be to complete all the backed up community plans?
I couldn't say. We can get back to you on that, though.
But will continuing this funding be at all helpful to that, or is
well,
this
certainly I could say if you take the funding away, it won't happen. But continuing the funding in the current structure, I think, is the best tool we have right now for making sure that planning case processing continues to get the budget to keep addressing those cases as they come in and not increasing the backlog.
Thank you.
And the game plan, I think it's 7 community plans in process now?
Yes.
When they're finished, then the expectation is others will roll into those?
Yes, as the various plans are completed, then the department will look and consider which plan to take up next as those staffing resources are freed up.
And how many total plans do we have?
I'm going to get the number wrong if I give it to you, so.
Pardon?
I'm going to get the number wrong if I give it to you, but it's on the order of 25 to 30.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No. Then we'll move that, we'll note and file that, and ask the CAO to give us periodic updates on these funds in the financial status reports.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, item number 7 was continued from July 25th meeting. This is a communication from the city attorney and ordinance relative to expanding the pool of students eligible for scholarship money from the Hernani Bernardi Scholarship Trust Fund and changing the composition of the panel that awards the scholarships.
So do we have someone from CD7?
Councilmember, CD7 has sent an email type report that I have a copy of, and I think it addresses at least some of the questions that you have raised at the last meeting.
Okay. Let me just ask, just so we're clear, it appears from the notes we have that this was started with a $1 million allocation. Now, did that $1 million ever come to fruition, or was it less than $1 million, or what was the total amount that went in the fund?
For details, I think I only have the report from CD7, so I think they will be in a better position to answer this question.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Roy Morales with the CLA. We did some research following the last hearing. I'm trying to track through council file index what really happened. In fact, the initial proposal was an allocation of $1 million. What subsequently was adopted by council was an initial allocation of $265,000 with the promise for a subsequent allocation of $250,000 for a total of $515,000.
Okay, so 515 went into the fund?
We were trying to track that through. I think it happened in 1994, 95, and documentation is in our.
But we know 265 went in.
265 went in, yes.
And then was there some subsequent ordinance is supposed to come and establish some of the criteria? Has that been completed?
Yes, and the initial recommendations that were approved with the initial $515,000 allocation, there was a request for the city attorney to come back with revised ordinance with certain criteria, that being establishing a role for the community to have input into the selection of awardees, also it made a technical correction to the geographic boundaries at the time, and then lastly it asked that the scholarships be recipients who were aware of environmental and landfill issues and aware really of the initial intent of this program, which was the emphasis on the role of Councilman Bernardi in the creation of the fund.
So that amending the motion ordinance has been done?
That council action was approved back in 1993, I believe, but we couldn't track through council file if the ordinance was ever submitted. We did not see that. We were going to pull it from archives, and hopefully it's there.
And then the final question I have is that, and so today what we're looking for is changing a broader grouping of schools that are available, and then reduce the panel, remove CD12 and include 7 and 2, and then a new authority as to who selects the members.
That is correct, and it's the expansion of the schools, not the number of recipients, and the change to the panels due to the redistricting.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, CD7, they're and who's recording and seconding this, but it's not geographic based, right? I mean, the redistricting is coming up. Does that affect us at all? Should it affect us at all?
Well, the one that's coming up, I cannot answer that. However, according to CD7, the reason why CD12 is going to be removed under this ordinance is because of some redistricting that changed the boundaries in such a way that it was no longer affecting the pool of students in that in the area mentioned by the ordinance.
It's the prior redistricting, Council.
It's what?
The prior redistricting, not the upcoming. So the prior redistricting made the changes.
Yeah, and then so we're making changes again. So
it's possible,
I don't know
depending on
there, but okay. Well, take up in council. Okay, thanks.
It's a little premature. How much money are we talking about? That is in that scholarship.
Councilman, we were still trying to track through the history. The initial allocation was intended to be approximately $515,000, and the scholarships were intended to be paid from the interest generated from that initial allocation. I'm not familiar with what Council District 7 would be familiar with the actual awards that were given in the total amount.
Will somebody from CD7 show up before the council takes action, so we can get some answers on that?
I'm sure those discussions, yes, Council District 7 will be, I'm sure will be available to answer those questions.
And why were they the particular ones chosen? Any particular reason?
I believe the majority of the geographic area is within their district, but I'm not sure.
I'd like that answer too, why that was picked.
No, I think when we heard this on July 25th, we asked questions about what the original intent was in limiting it to Mission, why it's being expanded and why it's being changed and on what basis and all that. Do we have that information?
I think that email from CD7 covers.
I haven't seen the information on that.
I think the city.
You have copies of the email from CD7?
We could actually place that on the council file if you would like, and that would and provide a copy.
Council members have a copy of it.
Give a copy for
Oh, I wrote down it. I'll send you a copy.
Let me show the council.
So,
I wonder if you just verbally want to answer those questions for the record, so.
I'm sorry, council member, while looking for
What the original intent was of the fund, why it was targeted to Mission College, why are we changing it?
I believe it was based on geography. The students are, the pool of students eligible for this scholarship is from a very well-defined geographical area that I think at the time it probably did include not just CD7 and 2, but also probably 12 as well. And now 12 is no longer part of this mix. Mission College is basically a local college, but according to the report from CD7, the experience, and I'm quoting, the experience over the last decade revealed the need to allow eligible students from the defined geography to attend higher education institutions other than just Mission College that meet their needs and goal. And basically, there was a need, I guess, a need to expand this to other students from the particular geographical area, eligible geographical area. Apparently, are attending not just Mission College, but attending other public institutions. And CD7 perceived the need to expand the pool of eligible institutions to all public institutions in the city of Los Angeles, although the pool of eligible students remains unchanged.
So, is it because they're not finding enough takers for these scholarships, or?
Councilman, if I can clarify.
Or are they just broadening and spreading themselves thinner?
Actually, what the original source of funding for this was the Lopez Canyon Community Benefits Trust Fund. So the intent behind that fund was to mitigate the situation for the surrounding area, which is why the geographic area was selected. So individuals who live within that geographic area are eligible for the scholarship. The proposed ordinance simply expands the colleges to which those individuals can attend. So it's the same geographic area, the same resident pool that is eligible, and it just allows them more options as to which colleges to attend, rather than just Mission College.
Yeah, I can't tell whether that violates the original intent of what they were doing and whether it's a positive or a negative. I mean, it sounds like it's just spreading, the same money thinner, and I don't know if there was more of an intention to actually help out Mission College as part of that, or not. And it would be good to know what the original intention was and whether that intention is being violated by this motion.
Good afternoon, Councilmember.
Hello.
With regard to, as Mr. Morales just indicated, those funds did originate from the Lopez Canyon Trust Fund. They were discretionary dollars for CD7. The intent was for Mission College, but there was, I guess, some difficulty in awarding some of those monies for scholarship purposes, and there was a discussion to actually expand the area to allow more students to participate. At the end of the day, it is specified in the ad code how those funds would be awarded, and I have it here. If you just give me one moment.
Sure.
Just so happened to have.
It was based on council members, award panel of 3 members, and so there was, like I said, some difficulty in awarding some of those scholarships. And the council member, given that these are discretionary funds, wanted to expand the area to allow more students to actually participate in these scholarship opportunities. So I don't think it's impacting in the sense that the money is being spread very thin, because the monies, there was one single allocation that was provided back in 1994, and it was a set amount, and there are still some funds that are available, and the council member was hoping to actually be able to expand the area so that they could be issuing more scholarships to the students that are in that area.
So does that mean more scholarships? Does that mean the scholarships wind up being smaller? It seems like there's a finite amount of money, so I'm not
Yeah, it's
clear
always
on-
been finite, but it's been finite since 1994. The monies are still there. So it was a single amount that was set aside many years ago, and those monies are still available. And they haven't been able to actually award those scholarships. And so the intent was to expand the area, expand the number of schools. At the end of the day, it's still going to be a finite amount.
Gotcha. And by calling out council districts, I'm not clear on the impact of reapportionment. So if there are different people representing those different districts, and there are different numbers, how would that impact it?
Well, as Mr. Morales indicated, when this fund was originally created back in mid-1990s, the boundaries were different. And so the intent was to have folks, the council members that were representing that area, to be participant in the award of those scholarships. And so when there was redistricting involved in 2000, the year 2000, the boundaries slightly changed. Now, when we go through redistricting again, it is quite possible that we may be asking city attorney to be drafting a new ordinance to capture any change in boundaries for that particular area that's associated in that Lopez Canyon, where the monies originally came from.
Is there some way just to call it the geography instead of the council district, so we don't have to do an unnecessary ordinance change after reapportionment?
That's a possibility, yes.
Well, the geography is, of the eligible students is actually quite well defined in the current ordinance, and is not changing in the proposed draft. The only thing that's changing is the geography for the eligible schools, from Mission College, one school, to basically all of the public schools in the city of Los Angeles. So the initial geography is really not changing. Now, the council districts obviously may change with redistricting. They have changed and may change again with redistricting, but that's a separate issue.
Okay.
And actually, council member does indicate that whatever council members represent that boundary are the representatives.
Okay, so it'll be done, so we won't have to do a separate ordinance to call out new council districts, I presume?
No, sir.
Okay, great.
All right. We'll approve the draft ordinance. If we can ask, because it's still unclear to me, the original intent of the program was that it live on the endowment of the funds, and it's unclear whether that is in place. It's still unclear as how much of the $1 million actually got in the fund. There was a $1 million motion, then it looks like it went to 2-something, and then there was potential of another 200,000, but we don't know if that ever got in the fund.
I believe that the full $1 million was transferred. It was transferred in increments, but we can go back
We can
and verify.
because our notes show one specific allocation, and then the second one's unclear, and it only got you about halfway. And then the last one is that there was an amending ordinance to be forthcoming that dealt with the role of the community and things of that nature. It appears there's unclear whether that was ever implemented. So if we can find those three things out on its way to council, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, so move that with those instructions.
Last item is item 10, which is the city treasurer to provide actual verbal report relative to withdrawing the city's credit rating from Standard & Poor's.
Good afternoon. This is Stephen Alec. With me here is Ariel Da Silva. This is, just for FYI, this is my last appearance in this committee as the interim city treasurer.
Why?
Tomorrow is my last day in the office of the treasurer. So in any case, we are here today to verbally report to you my decision to withdraw the city's general pool credit rating from Standard & Poor's Rating Services, which is also known as S&P. It is important to note that it is not the city's debt credit rating that we're talking about. That rating remains as AA minus, and it's the responsibility of the CAO. The one we're talking about here, I will state that on August 8th this year, following its downgrade of the long-term sovereign credit rating of the United States from AA plus, let me just say that S&P downgraded the United States credit from AAA to AA plus. As a result of that, we also received communication from S&P informing us that they would downgrade the city's general pool fund rating from AAA F to AAF. F just denotes fund as opposed to credit. By the way, the city has about 80% of its $8 billion invested in U.S. treasuries. That just tells you how much faith we have in U.S. treasuries. On August 11th, which is Thursday last week, I made a decision to withdraw the services of S&P, which rates our investment pool, because one, I believe that fund rating as the one provided to us is completely discretionary and has no bearing on the city's debt rating. Two, S&P or any rating agency for that matter has no fiduciary responsibility to the city and should not dictate how the city invests its money. Three, we have great staff and advanced technology analysis tools like BondEdge, Bloomberg, etc., and better judgment that has helped the city avoid oblivion as really witnessed by various S&P AAA rated corporations. Last point is that we in the Treasury have really lost faith in S&P's judgment based on the market reaction to S&P's downgrade of the U.S. debt. You notice that as soon as the U.S. credit rating was downgraded, everybody moved away from the equity market and went to buy U.S. Treasuries. They were doing that because they knew that that is the safest bet that you could make whenever things are unstable. So folks moved from AAA rated corporations and maybe other countries to invest their debt in U.S. credit. As a result, the U.S. government actually ended up paying less for borrowing money than it did before the rating. We are now here to answer any questions that you may have.
Let me just ask, overall, what was our purpose of hiring them in the first place? What benefit was it? Because they were one of three, right?
They were one of three. We started with two. And I'm sure Ray is laughing over there because, many years ago, I was totally opposed to this idea, but I was not in the treasurer's office. I couldn't change that. It's a bragging right. It gives us a bragging right in saying that, our fund is rated AAA. Every public agency that has rating with rating agencies normally have such high ratings. We go by a benchmark that they provide us, which in many cases is not necessarily beneficial. Sometimes it's overly conservative. Sometimes it's not as conservative as we may want it. For instance, Lehman Brothers went belly up when these guys rated them pretty high. We decided to drop that before before actually they became bankrupt. So the rating, as I said, is really discretionary, and it's something we don't need to do. It's folks who do it for bragging rights, especially if they're public agencies. Corporations do it for a reason, because it also measures their ability to be able to pay their debt. And so it has a connotation or has a direct link with the corporation's debt rating, but not ours.
All right. But let me ask you, what is our sense or our faith in the two remaining agencies?
We don't rate with them. We had Moody's before, but something before I went to the Treasury, something went wrong, and we dropped them as well.
Okay, so we have no rating?
So right now, we don't have any.
Right. Then let me ask, as far as you mentioned that there's no impact on our city's debt rating by doing this, and I'll get a concurrence, the CAO believes the same thing, or where are we on?
No, we believe the same thing. That basically, this was a rating that was placed on our pool, and I hate to use the words that Steve uses for bragging rights, but this was a way for us to demonstrate that we have a AAA on our investment pool, but it has no impact on our city's debt and our ratings.
Let me just ask Steve one other thing. Is that on right after they downgraded the U.S. portfolio, they then went forward on about 1,500 municipal bonds. How does that affect us, or if it does at all?
Municipal bonds?
They subsequently downgraded 11,000 municipal securities tied to the federal government.
Okay, are you referring to what is attached to the letter that shows the portfolios being downgraded?
I think it was a news article.
Excuse me?
Well, if I'm Ario De Silva, investment officer, I think what you're referring to is munis, sometimes they wrap them with pre-refunded bonds with treasuries.
Yeah.
So therefore, if treasuries were AAA, they got downgraded to AA, they would, in essence, those issues, they would have to downgrade them to AA.
So does that impact us at all?
Plus. Does that? No.
No, okay. And then the other thing I was wondering about is that in looking at my note, does this affect any of our future type investments for the Treasurer's Office?
No, it doesn't.
And then, let me add on a side question. Several months ago, we dealt with this, and it took forever, but this process of dealing with the Investment Advisory Committee. Is that in place? Do we have the ordinances done?
Yes, the ordinance is done, and we have reached out to the investment community to see who is interested. Excuse me. Several folks have expressed interest in serving in this committee. What I decided to do, because I know that there's a new person coming in, the Director of Finance, who will also be acting as the treasurer, I felt that because it's her committee, it will be her committee, that it would be a better idea for her to select these people.
So the committee and the ordinance is in play?
Yes. No, the committee is not in place.
They have to pick the people, but the process?
Yes. All that's left is picking people who are interested in serving.
Okay. And then do we consider your monthly report on the investment as the required investment policy report, or is that a separate report?
The investment policy requires that we report that on a monthly basis, but the admin code actually also requires that we make that report on a monthly basis.
Okay, so that when we get your monthly report, that is inclusive of the policy?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, there's a requirement that you produce a report about the investment policy for the city. When we get your monthly report from the treasurer, is that what is viewed as you publishing the investment policies? or are you merely telling us how the investments are forthcoming?
The code requires that we provide an investment policy on a yearly basis for city council's approval.
Okay.
So it's only once a year.
Okay, so when is that forthcoming for 2011?
I don't know.
Okay, if we can find out, because the thing is, I'm just trying to find out that monthly report we get, should we consider that as part of that, or is it a totally separate report?
It's totally separate document.
So if we can find out when that report is due, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
So help me understand this. We subscribe to two services. We used to subscribe to two services, possibly three
Correct.
services. Moody's, S&P, and who else?
We only did two, Moody's and S&P, but there are three major ones, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch.
And the reason we did that, particularly with S&P, is because it usually gave us good numbers and made it better for us. So if those independent rating agencies for us, who's going to continue to rate us on our bonds and our fiscal health?
No, for our bonds, for that is our debt rating. That's going to continue. It's still going to continue to be those three agencies.
Who does those?
Moody's, Fitch, and S&P.
So
They will continue to do that.
But that's for our bonds, and those are required, right?
Well,
To an extent, it is required because nobody will want to buy your debt without that kind of rating.
Well, okay. And we also pay for that service, or they do that independent for whoever wants to buy it?
we have to pay.
We pay for that service?
Yes.
But nobody would buy our bonds if we didn't give them that information.
I don't believe anybody will buy it.
Okay, so I always thought this was required. I just didn't think, no, we could easily get rid of these folks like this, and there's no repercussions whatsoever?
For my
For us-
action, I don't believe there's any, except that
No one's going to look at this and say that's a bad move, but why is the city doing this? They don't want to hide it, but then we were getting good ratings, so.
I doubt anybody would do that. I think that, the upside is that we will save $16,000 to $20,000 a year.
That's my next question. How much are we going to save? Okay, and what do other cities do? What does New York do, Chicago?
New York doesn't do it, Chicago doesn't do it. There are many cities who don't. I provided you a package that included all the cities that have that rating, that rate the investment pool.
Are those a packet?
Yeah, I think you have to remember that this is not on the bonds that we are issuing.
Yeah.
This is the rating that they requested on their investment pool. It started off with S&P probably a good 5, 6, 7 years ago. It cost us about $16,000 annually. And then there was a move to ask Moody's to then rate the pool as well. I think that was about $33,000. The Moody's was dropped a year or two ago, I think. And then now we have S&P. So.
First of all, Steve, where are you going?
I'm going to building and safety.
Good. Well, good luck with you over there. We need building and safety, and I think you'll be a great addition to the building.
Thank you very much.
On this stuff here, so bragging rights, now we can't brag anymore. Is that what it means?
Well, there are a lot of things to brag about. For instance, we can say that we dropped S&P, who failed to actually predict what was going to happen in the future. Remember, the market crash that came with the real estate debacle. It happened because folks like S&P rated AAA corporations that were not worth much of anything, corporations that are no longer there today. So the fact that we have the courage to say that, we were probably the first city to do this, I think that's a big bragging right.
And wouldn't the perception, don't get me wrong, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, I'm just trying to understand perception.
No,
One day we say we got bragging rights, next day they're not as great as we thought. I mean, help me.
It's not a bragging right that is really essential to us. It doesn't give us, there's no value to it other than just saying that we have AAA rating.
And what did it cost us a year to do that?
$16,000 to $20,000 a year.
And so now that they downgraded us, so to speak, in their psychodrama, we figure, forget them, they're stupid anyhow. That's sort of what you're saying, right?
I agree with you.
Okay, I'm just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that the perception isn't, well, you got downgraded, so you just got rid of them. But wouldn't the general financial public out there view us somewhat askance for saying, okay, we had them when we were getting good ratings, they gave us a bad rating, so to hide the fact that we deserved a bad rating, we got rid of the rating agency. I mean, for me, I'd be very suspicious in dealing with LA under that circumstance.
You know, if, Councilmember, for many years, the rating agencies, together with a lot of corporations, I would, you know, say that institutional investors have made a lot of noise wanting municipalities, that of course includes states and counties, wanting them to disclose more than we had been disclosing before. Because we are now forced to disclose a lot more than before, I think that it is going to be very easy for anybody to tell whether or not it is worth investing in us, in the city. The fact that we are not rating our investment pool, and the fact that we actually print on a monthly basis our investment and cash management report should be enough to explain to somebody that we are very transparent. We are showing you everything that we're doing. We're still measured by specific benchmarks, and in some cases we beat the benchmark. Sometimes we are the same. Sometimes they slightly beat us. But we are right up there, and we're going with the benchmarks. We are not in any danger, and I don't think that anybody who understands, you know, finance and understands risk analysis would have any problem with purchasing us at this time because of this.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we have enough positives that you can point to that it probably won't have too negative an impact on us. It just seems strange to me that the U.S. gets a bad rating, we get a bad rating, so we decide to retaliate against them, spank them by dropping them.
No, it's not. It wasn't a case of retaliation.
No, I understand what you're going to say. I'm just saying that would even be my perception as someone inside City Hall, much less someone outside City Hall. It looks to me like they gave a couple bad ratings in places where we didn't like it, so we dropped them. It's hard for me to see it any other way, to be honest.
I understand your point of view, Councilmember.
But let me see if I can clarify. Our rating, as it relates to the three companies, is on our debt that people will buy from us. This rating that you're talking about is our investment.
That's
that
correct.
we take our money and invest in something,
right,
which really has little or no impact on the outside public. It's where we choose to spend our money.
Correct.
Okay, so that's where, I mean, in a sense, but I would just caution that we not necessarily celebrate too loudly because that same company has to rate our debt.
I totally agree. I don't intend to do that.
So it's a difference in the public looking at where we're investing our money is a totally different view than where we're asking them to invest in our debt.
That is true. Just to add on that, you realize we didn't do any press release, and we're just trying to keep it as quiet as possible. I didn't even write a transmittal to City Council or to I didn't write a transmittal. It was just a letter to the mayor, which was copied to you and a few other folks.
Well, the thing is, I want you to know that there's no secrets in City Hall because Mr. Alarcon gave you great praise.
I heard that.
That someone finally did something for those rotten scoundrels in Big Bank. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, just saying that point real quickly. 16 to 20,000 a year. Mr. Parks makes the point about they're engaged with us on other issues. Mr. Koretz makes the point that public perception might be different. So what's the big deal? Why do you even do it to begin with? Just leave it alone.
I did it for the reasons that I gave you here before. First, it is a completely discretionary, rating. Number two, the perception anytime, because the truth is, in addition to downgrading the U.S. debt, which is still stronger than any other, they still have a negative outlook. So I don't know what they're going to do next. And I think that it is worse for us, for anybody to hear that our investment is downgraded to something worse than where it is today, than to just not have it, period. That's my rationale. Really, the big thing is not saving $16,000 to $20,000 a year is just incidental to the entire process.
Steve, also comment on several years ago when we got rid of Fitch is because of a similar issue that they...
It was Moody's.
Moody's. Explain what that rationale and why we chose not to continue them.
I wasn't in the office at that time, and I like...
Yeah, I think going on that note,
Here's the other couple.
I think going on that note, why we dropped Moody's last time.
Say it again?
Councilmember Parks mentioned about recollecting why we dropped Moody's, basically. We dropped Moody's a while back because we were AAA, and they were contemplating downgrading us to AA. But remember, prior to that was 2008 during the crisis, and they were very, very slow to reacting to all the mortgage issues, extremely slow. And in my opinion, now S&P is acting too fast as of what happened prior in 2008. But back then, it was at the time the Treasurer decided to drop them before they dropped us. We basically beat them to the punch. And their rationale, Moody's rationale, to be quite honest, there's been meetings, and the rationale of how they would come up with measuring our portfolio and how it was rated was not very logical, to say the least. So, therefore, it was the decision at that time to drop them.
So we'll keep this item here, and we'd like to get, maybe the next time we have one of the monthly reports from the Treasurer, is to give us an update on that committee and where we are as it relates to the Investment Advisory Committee. So we're going to add that to your next monthly report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll just keep this item here. All right, thank you. Any other items? Ray, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
There's no cards. We're adjourned. Thank you.